John Hook's Newsmaker starts now.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker. We're going to begin tonight with my interview one-on-one with JD Vance, obviously Donald Trump's pick for VP. He was in the Valley this week. He was at Arizona Christian University, and I spoke to him backstage before he took the stage, and we covered a wide range of topics. Take a look. Senator Vance, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I want to first ask you about the attack on the Hamas leader yesterday. And before that, Hezbollah. Israel is ramping this thing up. Are you worried about a wider war? And do you worry about assassination as a political tool?
Well, look, I certainly worry about a wider war, unfortunately, because the Harris administration has no deterrence. There's no fear of American leadership, and so you have a lot of bad guys doing something they shouldn't have done. And I think that what we have to do now, unfortunately we're in the position that we're in, is we have to empower the Israelis to get this thing over as quickly as possible. It's not in Israel's interest, it's not in our interest for this war to prolong itself. So with the Israelis, take care of the bad guys, take care of Hamas, and hopefully move towards a peaceful resolution in the Middle East, because there is appetite among some of Israel's Arabic neighbors to join together in a real peaceful resolution, but that's not going to happen while this war is going on.
On the campaign.
Yeah.
There's so much noise.
Sure.
In the end, in the final analysis, what does this race come down to in your view?
I think it's very simple. It's, do you want more affordable groceries and lower housing costs? If so, you should vote for Donald Trump. Do you want to close the southern border and stop the flow of drugs and fentanyl into our communities? If so, you should vote for Donald Trump. He actually has a set of visions and also a successful record of advocating for working people, of solving the problems that confront the country. And I just think that President Trump, he did it once, he's going to do it again, and we've got to reinstate that good American leadership.
On the tenor of the campaign, the attacks went from threat to democracy to you guys are weird. What do you make about this idea that you're weird, Trump's weird, and anybody who supports MAGA is weird?
Look, I think it's Kamala Harris having her campaign run by a bunch of social media interns who don't know what they're doing. But look, I'm a husband, I'm a father of 3 beautiful kids, and I want better American leadership to make this country more prosperous and more free. If they want to call me weird, I welcome it. I just want the country to do better, and I'm going to do everything I can to make it happen.
Okay. You were picked, we are told, to kind of deliver the Rust Belt, the upper Midwest.
Yeah.
That is industrial, it's union. Down here in the Sun Belt, it's a little bit of a different animal.
Of course.
It's really right to work, it's entrepreneurial, it's high tech. How does your message resonate down here?
Well, I think that what unites the Rust Belt and the Sun Belt, the industrial Midwest from places like Arizona and Nevada, is that people want good jobs. They want an American president that protects American jobs, whether they're in the factories or in the tech sector, and they want reasonable regulations, because you can't build a business, and you sure as hell can't build a factory if you're destroying the American energy sector and making it hard to actually make things in this country. So little different industries, sometimes little different histories, but I think the unifying message is we want a secure border, we want good jobs for American citizens, and there is a unified policy message to achieve that.
Okay, what do you have against childless cat ladies?
Nothing. Look, the left has taken these comments completely out of context. They've actually affirmatively lied about what I said. I mean, Kamala Harris said that I went after women who are suffering from infertility. It couldn't be further from the truth. Our heart breaks for women who are suffering from infertility. What I did say, and I do believe, is that Democrats have embraced a set of anti-child ideas. That's why you see rising housing costs. That's why you see parents getting jammed with surprise medical bills when they come home from the hospital with a baby. And that's why you hear a lot of Democrats saying some very weird things, like, for example, that women shouldn't have babies because of concerns over climate change. I'm pushing back against those ideas, and I'm going to keep on doing it.
Okay, did Donald Trump, in this last couple of weeks, it's been, I mean, you would admit, there have been a few things that have gotten you into some hot water in the media. Did he ever call you or reach out or say, JD, here's my advice to you. I've been through this for 8 years.
Look, what the president has said is the media is going to be unfair because the media is not interested in telling the truth about Kamala Harris's failures. We just have to take our message to the American people. We have to do everything that we can to get out there and earn every vote. That's been his consistent advice from the moment he selected me, and I think that'll be his advice for the next 3 months.
You're ready to be president if that were to happen?
Look, God forbid, you have to be ready for president when you accept this job, and I think that my ideas and certainly my experience in the Marine Corps and the business sector have prepared me to become president, but I think Donald Trump, he's in great health, he's going to make a great president for 4 whole years.
Senator Vance, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time.
Appreciate it.
When we come back, the longtime Maricopa County recorder, Helen Purcell. I'm trying to do the math here. She was recorder from, I think, 1989 to 2017. We're going to talk to Helen Purcell about how elections work, how it's changed over the years, and whether she thinks elections are secure. Next on Newsmaker. Welcome back on Newsmaker. The longtime Maricopa County recorder, Helen Purcell, kind enough to join us. You came down to the studio. It's great to see you. I can't even go back how many times we've done interviews over the years. From that 1989 to 2017, right?
Yeah, 28 years.
Well, you just watched the primary this week. That was pretty clean.
Yes, yes.
Were you proud of them?
Yes. But you know, they've been clean. There's just, any election's going to have some things that come up. 2022, it was the printers. You're always going to have something that comes up. It may be major that you have to deal with, or it could be something that you or no one else even sees, kind of behind the scenes.
If somebody,
like a custodian who doesn't show up at 6 o'clock in the morning.
And so when you're talking to somebody, they meet you and they go, oh yeah, you're the recorder. And they're worried about, let's say they're worried about the integrity of elections. What do you tell them?
It's good. It's a good system that was put in place that's just been improved on over the years. You know, we started out with the scan system in '96, and we just improved on that over time.
You're talking about when we fill in the bubbles,
right?
The machines.
You know, before that you had punch cards, if you remember.
Yes.
We changed in '96, so you've just.
And why did you do that?
Well, we had problems with the punch card machines several years before that, and I said,
dimpled chads, hanging chads, just like in Florida.
Machines that didn't work because it was 40-year-old technology. They weren't even fixable anymore.
So filling in the bubbles.
So I said, we got to do this 4 years before the fiasco in Florida. Thank you.
Right. Okay, so you make that change, and who was the model at that point who had been doing it that way that you said, we need to do it like?
Not really. I said,
No?
we need to do something else. Show me something different. We brought in vendors with several different models of something. Remember, at the time, we started out with the arrows. We did the head and the tail of the arrow.
Connecting arrows.
Yes.
That's not that long ago, actually.
No. That changed since I've been out of office. So.
Okay. So.
But that system had some limitations, so you have to go up to the next level.
Right.
Kind of in doing things. Technology changes so fast.
But voting changed, and you were a big part of this with mail-in voting.
We started that.
And people who have questioned elections, it's been primarily on the Republican side who've questioned the elections, at least in the last cycles. But it was Republicans who wanted mail-in voting.
Absolutely.
Do you recall why they wanted it?
Well, one thing of what we're dealing with right now are heat in the summertime. And people are in Flagstaff or Pine Top or Michigan or wherever, and they're not here for the primary election, which we always have had either summertime or early September.
So to push participation, you said we've got to make it easier.
Well, people were calling me and saying, what can we do? So we had to look at something.
Did you go down and lobby the legislature to make the change?
Yeah.
So you were personally involved in doing that?
Yes, sir. I spent a lot of time at the legislature.
Do you think one of the criticisms is that elections have gotten too loose and they're too long? Do you like the month-long election?
Well, I don't know how, John, you would do it that much differently because of the checks and balances that you have to put in place. As we always said when we were there, we'd rather do it securely than fast. So let's get it done right. It may take a little bit longer, and when you have more people, like we had it wasn't quite as bad this year with 100,000 ballots dropped off on Election Day. In '22, they had 290,000 ballots drop off on Election Day.
Because voters were told to vote in person.
Yes. So you've got to do that. You've got to check all those signatures. You've got to process all those ballots.
Before you can ever count.
Yeah, you just can't throw them in a machine and count them.
Exactly. Okay, so somebody says to you, I don't believe in this system. I think there's falderall going on. What do you tell them, and can you persuade them?
I do quite a bit of the time. I can persuade them if I show them what's being done, if they really look at it. And one of the things that the current recorder has done is have virtual tours or regular tours of going through the whole process so people see everything. It is transparent, as it should be. Mm-hmm. People should know what they're doing. People should know that all the machines are checked before an election and they're checked after an election.
Right.
For accuracy.
And there's a 2% hand count
Yes.
that's done to make sure what they're getting matches what they're getting out of the machine.
And that hand count is very random. We don't ever know what's going to be checked. On election night, the chairs of the parties come in and draw by lot.
Out of a sack.
Yep.
Poker chips.
Poker chips.
And that determines which ones are going to get the hand audit,
That's
the
correct.
hand count audit,
Yes.
to make sure the machines are counting appropriately.
Right.
And does that match up perfectly?
Yes, perfectly.
So when they do the hand count on the 2%, it matches the percentage they're getting out of the machine.
Yes.
And 2% is statistically significant.
Yes.
Okay.
It's enough to and because it's so random, it shows you that even if you're doing at the polling places or at the what you're doing with the early ballots, it's done very random and it's all checked out.
Okay, so if somebody who says the machines are rigged, the voting machines are rigged and they're flipping votes, what would you tell them?
How are they rigged? They're not attached to anything except the electricity in the wall, but they're not attached to
But
a
nothing
thing.
internal in that machine that could flip votes.
No, no.
And the random audit would show that.
Yes, yeah,
In other words, if the machine were changing results, you do a hand count to check it, to
Right.
check the work.
right,
That would show, we got a discrepancy here.
right.
Okay. The thing that I noticed, because I did a big lengthy piece on mail-in voting only,
Right.
and followed the ballot from start to finish. We did this a few weeks ago. I could not believe how many party operatives are involved in every critical step watching. A Democrat, a Republican, maybe an independent.
Right.
And if there was something amiss, they're urged to raise an objection.
Absolutely. That's what you want them there for. As I said, you have to have the transparency to everyone.
So you've got party people,
Yes.
very partisan, watching.
Yes.
That struck me as the ultimate check and balance.
Yeah. We've always had that. We always meet with the parties before the election to let them know here's what's going to happen, and you all need to be involved in every step of the way.
Okay. The thing that has changed since you first took office is most people were voting on election day.
Yes.
Now it's flipped. What is it now? 85% are mail-in?
Close to that, yes.
Do you think on balance it's a good thing?
Yes.
My only concern...
Because we have increased the turnout
Yes.
of elections.
My only concern, just looking at it as a layperson, I thought anytime you separate the voter from their ballot, that leaves the opportunity for falderall. But because of the barcode that's linked to an actual voter, which
Right.
is on the envelope of your ballot, I could not find a really thrifty way to game the system.
No.
I couldn't find it.
And you probably saw when you went through Runback and saw their system,
Yes.
how they check both sides of that envelope to make sure the ballot that's in there is the correct ballot
That's
for
right.
that particular voter.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
Because one of the issues is people on the Saturday before the election or whatever it might be, they've all got their ballots on the kitchen table.
Right.
And one voter ends up putting their ballot in the wrong envelope. And when that happens, they're calling that voter to try to fix it,
Right.
right?
Or we had what we called a spousal box. So when one came in with a signature that maybe looked like the wife on the husband's envelope, we kind of waited until the other one came in and you saw the match there.
Yeah. And on the signature verification, that also goes through several levels and partisans watching that too.
Right. And the people are trained. I know that they still do what we started doing, which is sending them to school to recognize certain aspects of a signature.
And even if they approve it, doesn't it go to another level to look
Absolutely,
at it? So
yes.
there's a manager who looks at it too to make
Right,
sure.
because you're getting some of your part-time workers in on the beginning of it. But if there's any discrepancy at all, I mean, most of them, you can look immediately at the signature and see that it matches.
That was my experience because I went through this, and at first blush, you can kind of see whether it's a match or not.
Absolutely.
One of our, and I don't think he'll object to me telling the story, Mark Martinez, reporter here, he got called because his signature had changed over the years.
Right.
And he hadn't been signing anything for a long time. He's not signing checks, he's doing everything electronically, and his signature changed. And they called him and said, Mark, we've got a ballot that says it's you. We're going to need some information.
Right.
And he had to provide, I think, Social Security, last 4 digits, mother's maiden name, this kind of stuff, right? So, I mean, in my experience, for what it's worth, just telling you straight out there, I could not see a great way to game that system.
No.
I did not see it.
We tried to look at every aspect of it and make it as secure and as transparent as possible, so everybody else could see that it was secure. And I hope, I just did an editorial last week, I hope
I saw it, I read it. That's what actually spurred me to say, you know what, we got to circle back with Helen Purcell.
I hope people look at that. I hope they understand. You know, this is a system that's been in place for a long time, but it's improved upon every single election. And these people that are down there work very hard to make this a good election.
So last cycle, when you had ballots that were cut that did not fit the tabulator,
Right.
they were rejected,
Right.
which is exactly what the tabulator's supposed
Absolutely.
to do, right?
Everybody
Because
says the machines don't work, and I said, no, the machines are working just fine. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They're rejecting a ballot they can't read.
So how did the ballots get cut improperly? Is that an outsourced, whoever did it, whoever?
That seemed to be the printer. Some of the ones was the printers they used, whether they were new or maybe really old.
And not sized
And not
correctly?
doing it right.
Okay. So these kind of things happen.
Absolutely.
They happened in every election you ran. You'd have some little quirk, something would happen at a
If
precinct.
anybody says they ever ran a perfect election, they're lying. Because they're not a perfect one. You're always going to have something you have to look at.
Okay, and when people say we want to go back to paper ballots, it is a paper ballot.
We've been doing paper ballots for 60 years. The punch cards are paper, and the scan system is paper. We've always had paper ballots. Always had a backup that you can look at. They have to be kept in a vault for 24 months after an election.
Okay, and are we also reconciling the number of envelopes with ballots cast
Absolutely.
to make sure that there aren't ballots going in that are not attached to a voter?
Right.
So those numbers have to reconcile.
This year they added one thing at the polling places where they wanted the poll workers to count the number of ballots that were dropped off, so they would have some idea before they went to the main station.
One of the things also that's changed, and this was brought to my attention and I hadn't really thought about it, Arizona's changed politically. Races used to be called very early in the evening. We talk about getting the results quicker to all of you. You don't call the race. That's
No.
AP or somebody else, some
Right.
other news organization calls the race. You have nothing to do with that.
I would never presume to do
But
that.
most of these races back in the 80s, this was a red state. And so the Republicans would generally win a lot of times, and you could call the race at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock.
Right.
Now these races are razor thin, margins of what we saw with Hamadeh and Attorney General
Mays?
Chris Mays. I've known her for 30 years. Chris Mays, that race was down to a few hundred votes.
Right, a couple of hundred.
Okay, so we are operating in very tight elections now, right?
Right,
This
right.
is why calling races becomes much more difficult.
Right. And there may have to be, either like in local elections, there may sometimes have to be runoffs. Or in your bigger elections, there could be a recount.
If there's a vulnerability of the system, what would it be?
I guess what's going on right now, where people are talking about the system, there's something wrong with the system. That's our vulnerability, is the social media telling somebody it's wrong. the election is not good.
And you feel, and I felt like Stephen Richer was in this position,
Yes.
and he took it on to rebut everything that came his way.
Yes.
But it's like drinking out of a fire hose.
You know, he started off by almost being held responsible for the 2020 election, which he was only a candidate, not somebody running the election.
That's a very important distinction. We now, and I think this started under Adrian Fontes, if I'm not mistaken, right? The elections are now taken over by the Board of Supervisors on the election day.
That started, yes.
Yes. Is that a good idea?
It's there again, it's another checks and balances. I don't think it hurts. It just seemed to me that it was smoother if you had the whole thing under one person's or one group of people administration, so they can look at the entire picture. Because what you sometimes get when you don't have that, and I know Pima County has seen this, is that pointing fingers at each other if something goes wrong. Oh, it's not my fault, it's your fault.
I said earlier that most of the heat has come from the right based on 2020, 2022.
That's what they were
But
told.
there have always been questions about elections, right?
Oh, yeah.
People would question results, even back in the day.
Right.
When you started, there'd be people going, I don't know about this.
Well, the thing that always comes up every time is the tabulators are connected to the internet. So I went in, when we built the new building and had the ballot tabulation room, I went in and did the wires, tied them up, hung them from the ceiling so everybody could see that they weren't connected to
They're
anything.
not connected to anything. The tabulators are counting, and then it goes to the master server.
Right.
That's compiling all the votes. Can the master server be gamed?
I don't see how it can be.
There's
That
only
the
3 people with a
software-
key, right? There's
Right.
only 3 people who can badge into that room.
Right,
They have to be accompanied by someone every time they go in.
absolutely.
This is where the master tabulator is. I'm trying to think of the other checks and balances. Stephen Richer couldn't even go into that room. He wasn't allowed in.
Right.
So, and there's cameras watching.
And I wasn't either. I didn't allow, even though I was over the whole process, I didn't allow myself to go in.
So who
the
goes
main
into
server
that room?
It's the people in the IT department
It's
who
okay.
are running that,
Okay.
who understand
And
it.
that master server is checked before and after the
Oh,
election
absolutely, yes.
too. Okay.
And the software for all of that has to be filed with the Secretary of State's office.
Do you think eventually the public, out of convenience, would start to vote online? Do you think that would ever be palatable to the voter? Or is it just too disconnected?
I'm not sure, because we thought about trying it. In fact, we did a phone thing on a small segment in one election.
Was it just a municipal election?
Yeah.
Something you just
Just
tried it?
used just a couple of precincts
Okay.
that tried to do it. It's just too easy for people not to believe this. And then the military came to us because we were thinking about doing that with the military and overseas, and they said, not going to happen.
Really?
It is not secure enough. So,
Interesting. They
so we said,
raised
okay.
a flag.
Yes.
So where do you think this goes from here? Do you see many more wholesale changes in how we do this?
I don't see wholesale changes, no. Because I think our system is good. Are we going to improve on it every election cycle? Of course we are. Because there are things that you have to do with technology to improve that. There may be a completely different tabulator that we use. God forbid that we would ever go for hand counting, because you think it's long now?
Yeah.
Try
Should it
that.
be a partisan office, Republican or Democrat?
I'm
Or-
not sure that it should be. I'm really
You
not.
were a longtime Republican.
Right.
But in the office, you try to hire a wide variety of people with different.
Most people didn't even know what party I belonged to. And that's the way I wanted it to be. When people came in and to work for me, I said, you leave your party at the door.
I was
It's not
really
there.
impressed down there, the level of commitment to getting it right.
They're down there all hours, the day and night.
It's great to see you again.
Good to see
I
you.
appreciate it. Helen Purcell, longtime Maricopa County recorder. I learned a few things, as I usually do in these interviews. Thank you. That was great. We're back in a minute on Newsmaker. Thanks to JD Vance and Helen Purcell for their time on Newsmaker, and we will see you next week.